You boys be quiet down there!
Welcome back to PC-98 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-98, the most popular Japanese PC series of the early 1990s. Zack 3 is the final game in the Zack series. On this channel, I've been playing through the games on the PC-88 and MSX2, but by the time Zack 3 was released in 1993, most companies were long done with both these systems, and the PC-98 was chosen as the primary development platform. So today, let's play the PC-98 version of Zack 3, or Sock 3, or however you want to pronounce it. The Eternal Recurrence. The game comes in a case very similar to the ones for the previous games. Inside, I believe I'm only missing the user support and survey cards, which leaves just the manual and discs. The manual is quite a thick tome and even has a dust jacket. The first half is in full color and is a guide to the world of Zack, including story summaries to get you up to speed on the previous games. The second half is in black and white and is the actual manual for installing and playing the game. The game is stored on 6 discs, and as you can see, I have the 5-inch floppy disk version of the game. But this time, instead of making 3.5-inch backups, we are going to use the original 5-inch discs. Let me introduce you to an old friend. This is Mr. External 5-inch floppy drive, who's been in storage for a long time. Now he's here on PC-98 Paradise, where he can be useful again. He was always, and still is, super reliable. Almost all PC-98 models have a dedicated SCSI port labeled 1MB floppy disk. By 1MB, it actually means the 1.23MB floppy disk format that PC-98 most commonly uses. Mr. External 5-inch floppy drive is designed specifically to be used with this port. We'll simply plug him in here, and he also needs power in order to work. We'll turn him on and he's ready to go when we power up the PC-98. In the PC-98's BIOS, we can designate the external drives as drive 1 and 2. That way they'll act exactly as if they were the internal floppy drives, and we can boot and play the game that way. But Zack 3 actually has a hard drive installer, so I'm going to use that instead. The installation process is a little confusing if you don't follow the manual exactly. First, you need to copy your DOS system over to disk 6 of the game by running a program called syscopy stored on the disk. Then, to run the installer, you need to boot this same disk. Due to the PC-98 quirk where drive letters change depending on whether you're booted from floppy or hard drive, this will make sure your drive letters match up later. In the installer, you designate the destination drive, directory, and source floppy drive. Then you just have to insert each of the disks as prompted to copy over all the data. I seem to remember these access lamps on Mr. External 5-inch floppy drive used to light up. Well, there's something that doesn't work anymore. When the installer finishes, we're instructed to reset the system with disk 6 still inserted. Disk 6 will act as a boot disk you have to use every time you run the game from the hard drive. Gotta love that anti-piracy warning, think again. That's very appropriate, because if you try to start the game using a copy of Disk 6 or run the game directly from the hard drive, the game will throw you a protect error right after the screen. There's no technical reason why you can't just run the game directly from the hard drive. Requiring the original Disk 6 as a boot disk is mostly just an anti-piracy measure. Anyway, let's start the game. The main menu allows you to load, watch the opening, skip the opening, and create a user disk is not available when using a hard drive. In the options, you can choose the save location, and again I can only choose hard drive. And for sound, you can either choose FM or MIDI. Let's choose to watch the opening. The game doesn't really have an opening in the sense that the previous games do. It's all shown through the game engine. It begins on a stormy night. Gotta love those wind and rain sounds from the FM sound chip. This is the town of Fearless, or Fearless I guess is how it's spelled, which is the town where you begin in Zack 1. This game takes place 2 years after, and here it means 2 years after Zack 2, not Tower of Gazel. We see Latok and his mom at home, and the dialogue screen with the character portraits is so bright and whited out. I know what you're thinking, I've got the brightness turned up too high. But no, here's what it looks like on an emulator. This is just how the game looks. What a weird choice. I hate it. Look how much better the background looks if you just freeze frame during the fade in or fade out. See, Microcabin? This is black. Use it. Okay, so what happens in this opening? Latok and his mom are visited by a wounded soldier in the middle of the night. He comes from the neighboring kingdom of Farland. This country was mentioned a few times in the previous games, and it should probably go without saying this has nothing to do with the Farland story series I've also been covering on this channel. So Farland Castle was attacked by an army of demons, and the soldier was sent here to ask for Latok's help, to which Latok immediately agrees. The soldier asks for a glass of water, but he never gets to enjoy that water before he dies. The Zack sword on the wall declares that Latok has a new task at hand. That's right, the sword can talk. Dawn has come, and it's time to set off. Ah, the brightness! This little animated title card is the only thing that slightly resembles the opening sequences from the previous games. So we're in Zack 1 town. The music here sounds the same, or almost exactly the same as in Zack 1. I spent some time messing with the speed option before just settling on the default. Another interesting menu option is the consult command, which will remind you what you're supposed to be doing next if you ever get stuck. Here, the Zack sword answers. There isn't anything important to do in this town, but you can spend as much time as you want catching up with the classic Zack characters. Bobby, the son of the weapon shop owner, says he's beginning to recognize the usefulness of weapons. Wow, character development. Leave the town to set off on the adventure. Rather than an overhead world to navigate, Zack 3 simply uses a map screen. Here we select the Kingdom of Farland, and Latok moves all the way over there. Once we move to a new location, we can't go back unless the game gives you a reason to. So Zack 3 actually has quite a linear progression for an action RPG. Then there's a long scene showing the events that transpired at Farland Castle prior to Latok's arrival. The castle was attacked by Zom Desire, the last of 3 demon generals remaining since the defeat of the Zack 1 and 2 end bosses. Zom Desire was mentioned briefly near the end of Tower of Gazel. The king watches his troops get mowed down and dissolved by acid. What Zack 3 lacks in opening and ending cutscenes, it makes up for with detailed sprite animation, and the animators seem to love gratuitous blood and violence.
Come on, get violent! Yeah, I want to see some violence!
Beavis, you dumbass, it's just a kid's show.
Since this is all done with tiny pixel art, I guess I can probably get away with it on YouTube. The king is brutally slaughtered, and when his daughter Princess Elmina was shown with her character portrait here, I assumed she was going to be one of the main characters of the game, but nope, she's promptly beheaded. A number of Desire's henchmen are introduced here, along with Rob Necromancer, who was in both Zack 1 and 2. He's immortal and keeps coming back no matter how many times Latok kills him. We'll fight him a number of times in this game too. He turns the dead soldiers into zombies to protect the castle, and even this boss of the first dungeon here is like, whoa, that wasn't really necessary. So we get back to Latok as he arrives at the outpost of the Farland army. He meets the general there and they agree to an assault on the castle when Latok is ready. There's an item shop and you can find 2 of Latok's allies from the previous games here. Feru the nun is completely unrecognizable due to the art style, but Horn the bard can be easily identified by his trademark horn-shaped hat. The character designer of most of the Zack series was Kia Asamiya, best known for the mangas Silent Mobius and Martian successor Nadeshiko. In Zack 3, he's been replaced by Koji Nakakita, who I know best from other Microcabin games, like Lucien's Quest for 3DO. So we begin the cavalry assault on Farland Castle, and at long last we're in the first dungeon and really playing the game. Zack 3 controls a little differently from the previous ones. Your sword swing has more width to it, which is nice. If you clash swords with your opponent a couple of times in a row, something called a rush attack occurs, where you trade blows until somebody dies. It isn't very strategically useful. What's more useful is holding down the attack button, which causes Latok to strafe. You can even jump while doing this. Release the button for a charge attack. Like in the previous games, you can turn on the Kana key for a force shot, but in this one it only occurs when you perform a charge attack. You can regain your HP by standing in place, even in the dungeons. If there aren't any enemies nearby, you can also hold the control key to temporarily speed things up. Nice! If only I'd figured that out before finishing the game. Latok's jump feels much the same as in previous games, and you have to use it in order to get inside the castle here. The game really doesn't hold you by the hand in what is actually one of the largest and most difficult to navigate dungeons of the game. You'll have to get on top of this rampart and then jump over this fence to get inside. Thankfully, the platforming is a lot less frustrating in this one. Even if you fall, you don't die, or even get sent back very far. And like in Zack 2, you can always save before you jump. Zack 3 even has a quick save option accessed by pressing F5. This saves to RAM though, so make sure you also save to the hard drive before turning off the game. If you fall into the basement of the castle and can't figure out how to get back up, there's also an unlimited teleport feature in Zack 3, which lets you return to a few recent locations in the game, like the army outpost here. The BGM in the first dungeon is probably the best in the game, which isn't saying much. The soundtrack suffers quite a bit without the genius of Tadahiro Nitta. Here one of his assistants from Tower of Gazelle, Yukiharu Urita, takes over as sole composer. The music is much less memorable, and like in previous games, it still only uses the older monaural FM soundboard. There are a lot of familiar FM sounds used, and overall, I don't hate it. And if the FM sound isn't your thing, you may prefer to use a MIDI module instead. Partway through the castle, we'll find a midway boss playing with the bodies of the king and princess. Holy crap, Zack 3, this game really isn't for kids, is it? A soldier named Zamhan will help us fight this very easy boss. No strategy necessary. Zack 3 has a party system, which feels kind of like a second attempt at the support member system from Tower of Gazelle. In that one, the characters just followed you around and didn't really help you fight. In Zack 3, you can have up to 2 allies who actively fight alongside Latok, and there are plenty of options to adjust the AI behavior. Zamhan will have to fight zombie versions of his former allies and best friend. That's pretty dark. While Latok takes on the castle boss. This guy loves collecting heads, and the king and princess are the crown jewels of his collection. This is one of the most strategic boss battles of the game, and it might be a little easier if you use Force Shot. When you beat him, he fittingly offers Latok his own head. Behind the throne room, Latok and Zamhan find what the enemies call a gate, where demons are crossing over from the demon world. Destroy it, and that's the end of the Farland portion of the game. To learn more about the gates and Zamdizaye, Latok travels back to his home country of Webis and the capital city, which has never been shown before in the series. At the castle, he meets back up with the royal messenger pixie from the previous games. This is her workplace. She's back in her small fairy form. With the demons roaming the world again, she doesn't have enough power to maintain her human form anymore, she explains. And outside in the capital city, they also meet Frey, who has been looking for Latok as always. Frey joins the party, but the pixie is too small to fight and just comes along on Latok's shoulder. I want to say that Zack 3 is a more mature and adult game than the previous ones, but when Frey and the pixie are around, they're back to their usual immature bickering over Latok. The capital is the biggest city ever visited in the series. Here you can buy items and equipment, and in this one you need to manage the equipment of all your party members, not just Latok's. Next, Latok visits the mountain home of a wise man named Gahu. He tells Latok to seek out the Native Gate, located on the Dark Continent. Passing through the Native Gate will allow him to travel to the Demon World, as long as he's holding the Zack Deeple, which he gives to Latok. Now, this is a different Zack Deeple from the ones that appeared in the first game, but I, for one, applaud the return of these mysterious pieces of jewelry with the nonsensical name. I just love saying it. Deeple is what happens when you shorten Deep Purple into one word. Gahu's home is attacked by a mysterious Black Knight and his allies. They take Frey hostage and order Latok to lay down the Zack sword in exchange for her life. The sword tells Latok not to worry. Only a descendant of the god Duel like Latok can wield the sword, and this is quickly confirmed by one of the bad guys who tries. But when the Dark Knight is easily able to pick it up, even the sword is surprised. Frey is freed, but the sword is taken. This means we'll have to find new swords for Latok. Guess it wouldn't be much fun having the best sword throughout the entire game. The party goes to a port town in order to travel to the Dark Continent, but the only remaining ship has already been claimed by the same Black Knight, who this time easily defeats Latok and leaves him to fight one of his companions. The party locates another ship, but to use it, they'll need to retrieve an item called a blue stone from a shipwreck. This is the same stone that was used to make the ship at the end of Zack 2 fly. They'll travel through a water-themed dungeon where we'll need to use the game's push mechanic to do some platforming. This mechanic is used quite a few times throughout the game, and it's quite nice that it's impossible to get pushed objects stuck into a corner. There's a silly scene where Latok puts on a dolphin costume in order to dive and retrieve the blue stone, but they quickly figure out that Frey is much better suited to the task. While Frey is searching the shipwreck, Latok meets up with Rune, Latok's rival and close ally from the previous games. Together they fight a boss. We now have Latok, Frey, Rune, and the Pixie on Latok's shoulder. Looks like the band's back together. This will be the party for most of the remainder of the game. They travel on the flying ship to the Dark Continent, but it gets wrecked by Necromancer after a boss battle with him on deck. The party is rescued by a snail, who nurses them back to health. No one here on the Dark Continent has seen humans before, but the snail mentions some centaurs who live at a nearby village. After earning the trust of the centaurs, the party meets a dragon in the centaur village, who tells them the native gate is located in some nearby ancient ruins. We'll have to go back and forth through these ruins quite a few times for various story-related reasons. The native gate at the end of the dungeon is guarded by Zom Desire. For some reason, in one of his phases, he takes the form of Gazel, the end boss from the Tower of Gazel. After defeating Desire, the party passes through the native gate, only to find the fairy world instead of the demon world. I hate this place. It's bright everywhere. With the Pixie here in her home world, she transforms back into human form and collapses. She and the party are helped by Isfante, Queen of the Fairies. Isfante uses a magical pool to show Latok the truth, but Latok isn't ready for the truth. But if you're ready, go ahead and ignore this spoiler warning. The magical pool shows the party the Black Knight and his allies making an attack on the demon world. Say, just who is this Black Knight anyway? Asks Latok. Isfante provides some hints. He's a descendant of the god Duel, like Latok, and has a wife and child in the human world. Latok knows the answer, but doesn't want to hear it. The Black Knight is none other than Latok's father, Dork Cart. We were told in Zack 2 that he was dead, but I guess not. A villain in a black helmet who turns out to be the protagonist's father isn't exactly an original twist, but it's something, I guess. Latok's father was cursed by his blood to revive the demon Badu in the first game. After doing so, he felt so guilty he wanted to die, and came to Isfante for help. In order to redeem himself, he hatched a plan to defeat the demon god Zexus and bring eternal peace to the world.
What a dork.
Yeah.
Latok can't agree with his father's methods, but decides to travel to the demon world to help bring an end to it all. Isfante tells the party that the reason the native gate brought them to the fairy world instead of the demon world is because they used the wrong Zack Deeple. Doh. The Deeple they need is in the possession of her former lover, the dragon they met at the Centaur village, so the party has to go back, but the Pixie decides that she's done with the adventure and stays here for the rest of the game. Latok summons the dragon he rode on in previous games in order to make this a fair fight. I was hoping for a shooter stage here, but unfortunately it's just a very easy shooter boss. We get the Deeple, but Frey decides that she's done too. Since humans can't use magic in the demon world, their Frey will only be a burden to Latok. Latok and Rune go back through the native gate, this time with the right Deeple. They plant trees at set points in this final dungeon, using seeds Esfante gave them. The trees gradually bear unlimited healing items, and you'll have to use them since this is the only dungeon where you can't heal by standing in place. Throughout the dungeon, we're shown scenes of the Black Knight and the others making their way ahead of Latok and Rune. Each of them will make their last stand, fighting one of these demon leaders along the way. Damn, you gotta love the sprite animation in this game. When Latok and Rune catch up with them, Rune leaves the party to help them make a final stand. Funny how everyone is suddenly on the same side now. Latok goes on ahead to catch up with his father, fighting Necromancer. Latok's presence distracts his father, who suffers a fatal blow and loses his helmet. But good old Dork is still able to send the Zack sword flying into Necromancer's demonic-looking capsule, which is the secret to his immortality. Latok regains the Zack sword to defeat him for good. Necromancer's true form is an old man, who pathetically begs to be saved. But all the curses that he cast on others return all at once and cause him to explode into a pile of blood. Latok says his final goodbyes to his father. Wow, he actually looks like the same character from the opening of the first game. He asks Latok to defeat the demon god Zexus for him, and gives Latok the dual armor and equipment. With a new caped appearance, Latok sets off through the final leg of the dungeon. At the end, whoa, that's kind of a cool looking effect for the PC-98. It's a gate to the space between the three worlds, where normally only gods may enter. Inside, with Latok wearing the dual armor, Zexus actually thinks that Latok is the god dual, and nothing will convince him otherwise. I used up a bunch of my remaining healing items in order to easily defeat the final battle on my first try. It was a little anticlimactic. Then Latok finds himself before the chains which hold the three worlds apart. With Zexus now dead, the chain of the demon world is broken. Esfante asks Latok to break the chain of the fairy world, which will also kill her. At first Latok refuses, but Esfante explains that it must be done, and that she will be alright spending the rest of eternity with Duel. To break the final chain, the guardian of the human world must be sacrificed. That guardian is the Zack sword, Jin of Zack sword. After bidding farewell to the sword, Latok has broken all three chains, and the three worlds will be one again. It was Esfante's wish that the pixie be made the new queen of the fairies. Are you sure you want to do that? Latok meets back up with Frey, Rune, and his allies, and they all go home on the newly repaired flying ship. Latok and Frey bid farewell to Horn and Feru and travel back to Latok's hometown. There, when the mayor's daughter, Ellis, says they should all go inside to talk, as sort of a concession, Latok says, "Frey, won't you come too?" And though it's left ambiguous, I guess Frey sort of wins in the end, in her feud with the pixie. After all, the pixie is busy being queen now. And for the final scene of the series, we're taken back to the bar in the capital city, where a woman asks Horn to sing her a hero's saga, and he obliges by singing her the saga of the greatest hero, the one true legend of the world. And that's it, time for a very short credits sequence, capped off with an end screen where you have to power off or reset. Since Zack 3 is a very different game from the rest of the series, it's no surprise that along with the character designer and music composer mentioned earlier, most of the staff are different. This one was directed by Yasuhiko Nakatsu, who directed Frey. Some of the former staff members' names do appear, but mostly under special thanks. If you want to read some funny messages, there's a staff room hidden in the bar in the capital city. As for other secrets, there are a few text documents to read on Disc 2 of the game, including a long Zack side story, and a document which among other things mentions a sound test you can access after finishing the game. There's also a debug mode with a number of cool options to mess with. The only PC that Zack 3 was ported to was the Fujitsu FM Towns. This version is virtually identical to the original on the PC-98, aside from a few CD audio tracks added here and there. The music sounds surprisingly similar to the PC-98 version. It doesn't seem to use any stereo sound or take much advantage at all of the FM Towns Sega Genesis sound chip. The only console port of the game was on the PC Engine. It does about as good a job as could be expected at replicating the original PC graphics, but with smoother scrolling. It is a little flickery, and it would be nice if there was a speed setting to make Latok walk a little faster. There are a few voiced cutscenes added, but the CD soundtrack is unfortunately just a recording of the LA MIDI version from the PC games. This is the only version that has an English patch. Rumor has it that, like Zag 1 and 2 for PC Engine, this one was actually developed by our old friends at Telenet Japan, though the Telenet name never actually appears anywhere. This is listed on the Japanese Wikipedia page, and a number of known Telenet staff members appear in the credits, so I guess it checks out. Zack 3 was the final Zack game, but one other Zack-related title is Tower of Cabin for the PC-98 and MSX2, which is basically a microcabin game all about microcabin. Walking through the towns with that quiet, relaxing FM sound and those muted pixely graphics makes me feel a weird sort of nostalgia for a game I've never played before. Maybe only a certain kind of matured retro gamer can really enjoy this look and sound, so in a way I'm glad I never played Zack 3 when I was younger. Besides, you really have to play all the previous Zack games in order to fully appreciate this one. The excessive violence can be almost a little bit too much fun to watch, and while the game as a whole didn't quite turn out to be the mature adventure for adults it initially appeared to be, I enjoyed just about every second of it. The mostly linear adventure moves along quickly and is seldom challenging, with fairly easy battle and scenarios which never required me to use a walkthrough, yet the game feels sufficiently long and satisfying. Perhaps Zack 1 is the most balanced and a more fully realized traditional action RPG, but I gotta say, I think personally I enjoyed Zack 3 the most. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-98 Paradise. I'm happy to see lots of new patrons and YouTube members displayed on your screen. I owe them for all their generous support. And thank you for watching my coverage of the Zack series over the years. This has been Mr. Jakes, and I'll see you next time with something else.